Hello everyone, this is Melanie and I'm back with another speed build. So this time I'm doing Schloss Linderhof. I probably butchered that, but it is Schloss is castle in German. So this is a German castle. I used to live in Germany. Obviously I didn't learn the language very well, but I lived there for a while and we visited this place a couple times. And it was just a very magical place. So I decided to try to make a little mini version of it. And I don't think you would really call it a castle because it's kind of small for a castle. It was more like a palace or like a summer home. I don't know. But crazy King Ludwig lived here, and I don't know. Even though the person who lived here was really weird and it was probably built using like taxpayers' money that couldn't afford it. It was just in the middle of the mountains and it was just so pretty, so I wanted to recreate it here. I've been doing a lot of little mini castle builds lately. Like I did a mini Hogwarts, and I call them mini because I don't want to make it exactly like it. Well, because I can't. There's just not enough objects in the Sims to do it. And yeah, they're obviously smaller. Sorry, I keep going back and forth between looking at the picture and looking at what I'm doing. Usually I would have a separate thing that I was looking at, like a separate picture, so I didn't have to keep switching back and forth on my screen, but for some reason I didn't this day. So you just get to go back and forth with me. And it took me forever to figure out how I was going to do the layout of this castle, because it has like a ledge, and then it goes down into a courtyard, and then the courtyard goes up into some steps that go all the way up this mountain. So if you stand in the courtyard by the fountain and you look to either side of you, it would be the castle going up on one side and then steps going up on the other. So it's kind of like mirroring each other. I don't know, it's really cool. And there was also a grotto. So it was like a cave, but it was man-made. Or I don't know if it was like a cave that was added to or if it was completely man-made. But the king who lived here, he would go to that cave, and his favorite musical composer, Wagner, would come and perform, like do private concerts for him. And he would sit out in this little underground lake in like a carved swan boat, and he would just watch these private concerts. It was like full orchestras and the composer, and they came just for him. So that's pretty cool. That would be like if Matt Carney, who's my favorite singer, came and serenaded me with his whole band, and I was chilling on a swan in the middle of a lake. It would just, as trippy as that would be, it would be pretty awesome. So I don't know if I'm going to make the grotto. I kind of want to make the hidden grotto a couple floors down in the basement, because there's not room left on this lot to do anything. I pretty much squeezed everything I could in there. But I think it'd be cool to kind of like make a secret passageway to go down to it. Maybe put some instruments in there so I could sort of make it like it was in Linderhof. And so a lot of the details, I don't know, I couldn't really make them look exactly like they do in the original. So I had to make like kind of clunky versions of them. Like instead of lots of statues, I just have that one statue in the middle. So I did the best I could with what I had, but it's kind of like the Fisher-Price version of the real Linderhof. Like it's chunky and looks kind of cartoony, and it's like big and plastic, kind of like Fisher-Price toys are. And yeah, you get this, the lovely Linderhof Fisher-Price version. And Yeah, I was very much struggling with this roof because the roof looks like it's on two tiers, but I couldn't, you can see it there in that picture just barely. I couldn't get the roof low enough, so I wanted it to look like the roofs were two different heights, but when I put up another level, then it just made it too tall. So I finally figured out that I just needed to like dome up the roof on the back more so it looked like it was taller. Yeah, there's a lot of architectural words flying about. Try to keep up, like domed roof thingy. Yeah, pretty amazeballs. It's kind of looked like the Taj Mahal here for a second. But yeah, I was really struggling. So this palace is pretty awesome. The guy who lived here, King Ludwig, so his main castle, but I don't know if he actually lived in it that long because he wasn't alive long enough to see it finished, and it's actually never been finished, but his main castle was Neuschwanstein, and that is that really famous German castle that apparently Walt Disney modeled the Cinderella castle after. And I heard that like 12 times when we were visiting that castle in the visitor center. Everyone would be like, "Did you know that Walt Disney?" And I was like, "Yes, I've heard this before." But now you get to hear it. So you've probably heard it before too. But anyway, that castle was his main one, and this was like his summer home. So he's a pretty big deal. I don't know if he was really rich or if he just took people's money, but either way. And he also didn't like people very much, so which is probably why he just kind of sat out on that lake with in his own little swan without anybody there with him. So in this castle, they have a kitchen in the basement, and he didn't want to have to see any of the servants, so they would set the table, and then the table would be lifted up through a hole in his dining room, and then when he was done eating, he would send the table back down and they would clean it up. It kind of reminds me of like the house elves from Harry Potter, because they have like an identical table set up in the basement, and they just set up all the tables and they magically appear in the Great Hall. You know, Harry Potter is fiction, and this isn't, but still. I think maybe J.K. Rowling knew all about this little crazy King Ludwig, and maybe the house elves were modeled after it. I really don't think that. Well, maybe I do. I don't know anymore. Yeah, I was struggling a lot with the roof. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't recognizing it as a room, and then I would take off the roof and realize that, oh, they don't have a ceiling for most parts of this. And I am going to split this up into the interior being another part, because I kind of went all out on the interior. I tried to make it as extravagant as I could. I mean, he had like a bed that was like 15 feet tall and 4-poster, and like it was on its own ledge, and it had like a gold fence around it. I don't know. His bed was crazy, and there was like velvet draped everywhere. So I couldn't do exactly like it was, but I tried to make it as ornate as I could. I think I end up using that statue that's up there right now. That little guy just kind of stands there, sadly. And in the fountain, it's really cool. There's like these Triton, like these merman creatures who are like spouting out water in the real thing, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. Well, there's just not a way to do that. So I just put a little fountain in the middle. And you're just going to have to imagine little mermen with water shooting from their eyes. It's actually probably not from their eyes. It's probably from their tritons, but still. You can imagine it however you want. Yeah, you can kind of see a picture there of the gold thing in the middle of that little pond lake thing. And I was getting really worried at this point that this was going to be way too small. Like, for all the stuff I wanted to fit in, this did not seem like it was going to be big enough. And it actually wasn't. When I started doing the interior, I realized, like, if I wanted this to have more than one room, I was going to have to expand it. So I don't know if I do it in this part or the next part, but I do end up expanding out the back to try to, like, get me a little bit more room. I mean, the actual palace is small-ish, like, relatively small, but I didn't want it to be that small. It was like a playhouse. I wanted it to be like livable. And then I was trying to put all these pillars in, and I haven't decided how I feel about pillars yet. I really like how they look. They take forever to put in because you have to like move objects them up if you want them to be on the second story or like higher. But when you go to play and you take down the walls, the pillars don't go anywhere. So there's always like you're looking through little pillar slats to try to like play with your Sims. It's like you're looking inside a jail cell. There's just all these pillars in the way. So sometimes I just end up deleting them because I can't see anything. Same with trees. Sometimes they really annoy me, so I just delete them. Or I just don't ever put them in. With this build, I was pretty fortunate because there are trees, but they're very far away from the actual house, so they wouldn't get in the way, and they're pretty small. I tried putting, another statue up there, an astronaut, but that just seemed a little too out of place, and then the other one I wanted to use was too big. And again, there's that fountain. No mermen, but you do what you can. And I was really liking it at this point. I was happy with how the roof was going. I was just trying to like make it look more over the top. Like it just looked kind of like the shell of a building, not really like ta-da like that one is. The other day I was accidentally I was trying to look up actually what my childhood house looked like so I could do a speed build of that, and I ended up seeing like the satellite view of this palace of Linderhof, and I realized when I did that I had done the roof completely wrong. There were like a lot more sections that I didn't know about. So I thought it was accurate because I could only see it from the front, but when I looked at it I was like, oh well, that's not what I expected. But then I was like, whatever, it's a mini version anyway. So it's different, but I don't know, I still like the way this one is. It's still pretty cool. And I have no idea who I'm going to have live in this. If anybody has any idea of characters that would live in here, maybe you have a crazy Ludwig roaming around already. I don't know. But I really don't know who to put in here. Just like a regular family with kids, that just seems weird to me. Like kids running around on the marble floors. I don't know. Maybe it will just like remain empty. I've thought about turning it into a park or some sort of like public space like a museum. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. But I don't really like museums. In real life, I like museums, but I don't really like Sims museums. I'm kind of like, I can see that painting at home. Nothing special. So I don't know if I want to submit my beautiful work of art to the dastardliness that is a museum. Here I am looking at that again. I just have to keep going back and seeing like, oh, what am I doing wrong? I really should have just like, if it was back in the day, I would have printed out a picture and like put it on one of those. Do you remember they used to have those little easel things, but it was made specifically for papers to sit next to you on the computer so you could type them up? It was like a great invention. But anyway, if I had had one of those, I could have just looked over and done it. But I was not about to print out a picture. That was just ridiculous. There's a printer in my room only steps away, but it just seemed ridiculous to do that. I don't know why. Because I'm lazy. And I did end up putting those little girl statues up there. I actually really like that statue. I don't know if it's relevant to this build at all, but it did. I used it because I had to, and I think it looks good in the end. And I thought about putting these little top hat guys on there, and I would have really liked them if they hadn't had such distracting color of hats. So if those hats could have been stone colored, I feel like they would have been perfect. But they were just way too like in your face. Like, here's this nice old place with turquoise or black hats. I don't know. So they had to go. And I don't think I end up using suits of armor. Oh, nope, there I am trying it out. Maybe I do end up using a suit of armor instead of that guy. But he does look kind of good. He looks just like stone. Yeah, I like how you can make the suit of armor a very silver color, but it does end up looking really stonish if in a certain light. And I feel like if I had the romantic stuff pack, it would be perfect because they have a recessed alcove with a statue in it. But I don't have that pack, so that was not an option. And I was having a hard time figuring out how to put greenery in because I knew there were trees and things, but there was no grass. It just all seemed cement to me, so I didn't want like a tree just growing from the cement. That didn't seem pretty natural to me. And plus, I don't like it when there are buildings without any vegetation because I feel like a building in The Sims without any sort of landscaping looks very artificial. I mean, it's never going to look like a real building, but at least when you have landscaping in, it kind of gives it some context and makes it look a little more natural. So I figured I could just put these down, these trees down there, like they weren't in the way. And so I don't know, I think they turned out pretty good. There's nothing really close to the actual palace, no vegetation, but this is just gonna have to do. And this was a really fun build. I like how tiny I ended up making it. Like, I purposely chose a tiny little lot so that I wouldn't like bite off more than I could chew. Like, I didn't want this to be a giant little palace. I wanted it to be mini. So I chose a little baby lot, so I had to restrain myself. And I really like it. It's just kind of like neighborhood house, palace, neighborhood house. And I like that. Like, what kind of person lives in that house? It's like that show that was called, what was it called? Who Lives Here or something. But they go and explore weird houses and they show you the inside and the story of why the house looks different from every other house in the neighborhood. And this one would be a candidate for that, I think. It really would. So I want to do more mini builds, mini castles. So I'm thinking of doing Neuschwanstein, which I don't know if you know this, but Walt Disney modeled the Cinderella castle after it. You know, you probably didn't know. And then also, there's another one that is really close to that castle. It's like on across the mountaintop. It's called Hohenschwangau, and that is the one where Ludwig actually grew up. So that would be fun to do too. It's more yellow, and it's not as imposing. It looks more like a realistic place